What if I told you financing new construction is not the same as financing a resale home? That would be the truth, and there are several differences that you really need to be aware of when you're financing a new build versus financing an existing home. Let's talk about the existing home first. In the normal real estate world, contracts are typically written for 30 days because that's about the amount of time that's needed to write the contract, go through inspections, get all your financing lined up, and close on the loan. So that's normally about a 30-day period. But when you look at that same scenario for new construction, you now have to add time to build that home. So instead of 30 days, nobody can build a home in 30 days. You have to do all those other things, but you have a much longer period of time to do them in, somewhere between 4 and 12 months, depending on how big your new construction project is. So just understand from the very beginning that if you're buying a resale, you're typically looking at closing and moving in about 30 days. If you're buying new construction, now it's going to be somewhere between 4 months and a year. So number one is the timing of the whole process. Number two is how the interest rate is handled. Because the timing of an existing home is only 30 days, it's easy to lock your interest rate. In other words, to guarantee that it will be the rate that you've chosen during that 30-day cycle. But on new construction, if it takes 6 months to build that home, how do you guarantee you're going to have that same interest rate for a 6-month period? There are actually ways you can do that with what we call an extended lock. Some interest rates can be locked up to a full year, but you need to know the trade-off is you're probably locking a higher rate in order to secure your rate lock for that period of time. So number one is the timing in general. Number two is how mortgage rates are handled. So if you're not going to do the extended lock, what is your other option? What do you need to be aware of? We call it floating the rate. When you float the rate, you're just allowing interest rates to change throughout the construction of your home. So if you're 6 months from closing and today's rate is 6%, rates over the next month might go up to 6.5%, and over the month after that might come down to 5.5%, and over the month after that go back up to 6%. We typically see trends where rates move down or rates move up, but they're going to change from day to day, and they will change or could change a lot more over a 12-month period than over a 30-day period. So if you're floating your rate, then you're going to select at some point in the future as you get closer to your closing to lock that rate in. And the shorter term you lock for, the lower the rate you're going to get. So just know that if you're building or buying an existing home, then you only have to worry about a 30-day lock, which is a typical interest rate, what some might call the market rate today. But if you're buying new construction, you might either have to lock your loan for a much longer period of time, having to lock at a higher rate, or you might have the uncertainty of rates moving during your construction phase and you waiting till you're like 30 days out in order to lock that rate. So number one is total time of the project. Number two is how interest rates are handled during the project. The third and big one that we run into with a lot of people is the taxes. Taxes on new construction are very hard to know. Well, why is that, Michael? It's simple. There are a couple things that go into taxes in Alabama, and the main ones are who owns the property and have they taken advantage of any exemptions that are out there. Now, on a resale, you're purchasing a home. Let's say you're buying the home in July, and that house has been assessed by the tax assessor. We know exactly what the value of that house is, so we know what the taxes will be. If the current resident of that house lives in it and has claimed a homestead exemption, then when you close on your house and file your homestead exemption, your taxes really will be the same as what the previous person was paying. But in new construction, that's very different. For one thing, that land has been owned by the builder, and the builder doesn't get your homestead exemption. So his tax rate of that property is double what yours will be once you file your homestead exemption. Number two, the timing of when you close. You must close on your home before the end of September and file on your homestead exemption before the end of December. If you don't, you're going to have to pay the builder's tax rate for the first year. So your taxes could be double what you expect them to be. And the third and biggest part of taxes is we don't know at what stage your home is completed when the tax assessor comes and assesses it. If when the tax assessor comes by, it's just a flat lot with nothing built there, then the assessed value of that is going to be just the lot, maybe $30,000, $40,000. But if when the tax assessor comes, your house is 90% complete and you're building a $700,000 house, then the tax assessed value is going to be like $600,000. And you're paying the builder's rate, double your normal taxes on $600,000. So the first year, you really don't know until you get very close to closing what your taxes are going to be. Now, once you've closed and you go file your homestead exemption, the next tax year, that homestead exemption will kick in and that number will become very predictable from that point forward. But the first year, there's lots of uncertainty around those taxes. So again, you think financing a new build is going to be the same as financing a existing home, but it's really not, for three different reasons. One, the time frame is much different. Two, locking your interest rates is completely different. And three, one has predictable taxes, the other has uncertain taxes. If you have a particular scenario you want to talk through, or you're thinking about buying new construction and you want to have a conversation about it, just drop me a DM, put new construction in there, and I'll give you a call and we'll talk it through.